Hello BookTube, it's time for another video about science fiction. I'm filming this late Sunday evening to go up on Tuesday. And it is extremely hot here, so I've turned off the fan because it is quite noisy. So I have my trusty towel to wipe off pouring sweat, which will soon, I can already feel it through my pores. This week, I'm looking at an epic series in science fiction. There's a few of those that are exceptional. This one has made a few rounds recently on BookTube, and I was to have been part of a read-along in February. However, my heart attack and COVID sort of put pay to that. But over the last couple of weeks, I've read the first two novels. Well, what is that, you ask? That is the Hyperion Cantos by Dan Simmons. And the first book was written in 1989. And the second one, Fall of Hyperion, was released in 1990. Now, they're meant to be one book, one novel, but as you can see, it would be a massive book. So the publisher split it in two. It was later followed up in 1996 with Endymion, and it gets bigger. And then the final book, novel, is Rise of Endymion. And that's a big sucker, over 800 pages in the mass market paperbacks. Now, it actually started a bit before that, actually in the early 80s. He'd written a few stories that are sort of proto. Well, one is actually part of the first novel, but anyway, it was in they were published in book form in Prayers to Broken Stones. Now, Remembering Siri is one, and it's used pretty well verbatim in the story of the counselor in the first volume in Hyperion. And he calls it a sort of a Romeo and Juliet type story. And then another one, which was entitled Death of the Centaur. And it has little bits and pieces that he uses for setting wise and the Shrike in the story. So they're not really prequels as sometimes they're called, but they are, well, the Death of the Centaur is worth reading to see where the germination of a few ideas came from. And then in 1990, is it 2000 something? 1999, he wrote a short story for a collection here edited by Robert Silverberg called Far Horizons. 11 masters of science fictions return to their legendary worlds. And this one is the story, The Orphans of the Helix. It takes place a few hundred years, I think, past from the end of Rise of Endymion. So that is definitely part of the Cantos, is Orphans of the Helix. Anyway, this video is not so much a telling of the story of Hyperion, the Hyperion Cantos, as so much as more of why, at least I think, it is a great science fiction saga, a great science fiction novel. There's a lot that are fun, but there's a few that transcend just good story, and they do more. And this one is often compared to Dune by Frank Herbert, which is a fair comparison because they create intricate, detailed worlds with interweaving stories and characters that fold back on each other, and then you really don't see the germination of it until you reach the end, and then you realize where it was at the beginning, and how he grew it from the beginning, and it permeated out in all its tendrils, and just layer upon layer upon layer of other things, not just story, but cultural, sociological, ecological things, especially in Dune. It's just all these things, historical, even historical rhetoric, historical revision. It's all in there, just intermeshed, and that's what makes it, to me, a great story. And with Hyperion, excuse me a minute, it's starting to pour down on my face. We've got a setting, a universe. It's populated mostly by humans. There are other aliens, but humans have pretty well destroyed most other aliens. It hints at intelligent aliens, but there's also the computers, the artificial intelligence, technocore, that is a big part of it. But it's set in the future, about approximately 900 years for the most part. It's set, at least the first two books are set 900 years in the future. The Endymion and that jump ahead a little bit, but also it does. It goes further than that. It goes tens of thousands of years into the future as well, with scenes, and then it goes into the past as well, or the ramifications of things that happen in the future and in the present of the story for the past. And it's there's an empire, a human empire, called the Hegemony. It is approximately 450, 500 years after they left Earth, after Earth was destroyed. And there are, in this hegemony, hundreds of worlds, and there are approximately 150 billion humans, and they're interconnected by a web, what they call a farcaster. It's a gateway that you can walk immediately from one planet to another, or from a ship to another planet. It just, it's instantaneous traveling. And people, even rich people, have these farcaster houses where one room is on one planet and another room is on another planet. And they see it's constantly open, and they see it, and they can just move from one room to another, and literally from planet to another, through light years. That would take years of travel through spaceship. Now this is all done in combination, in working with the AIs, the technocore, which is sort of a love-hate relationship on both sides. I won't get too much into that, but there is a love-hate relationship, and there's humans that want to break away from the core, and there's factions in the core. There's three factions. Ones want to kill humans, ones want to work with humans, and ones that are not too sure, and let's just wait and see, and sort of keeping some harmony. But there is another faction of humans that do reject the technocore, and they don't use farcasters, but they travel slow speed, snail speed, I guess, like light speed, through the universe, and it takes years to travel between planets and systems at times. They have moved outward, and then they have sort of they are more interested in adapting themselves to the environment, environments they encounter, rather than the hegemony are still tied to terraforming and changing and destroying planets from what they were, so humans, they could live the way they did on Earth. And they're very tied to the past in that way. And this is sort of the milieu that we start with this, but there is an anomaly. I can't even say it anymore. But there's a planet called Hyperion that has a strange valley of the time tombs, and they call them time tombs because they call them tombs because they're moving backwards in time. They know that. And there is a creature that comes along with this that has created like a mythology, a fear, and even a religion. It's called the Shrike, and it's the Church of the Atonement, which is very big. Christianity is very, very minor now. There's other religions that have come and gone, but Christianity is still important in the story. So it starts out, the structure of the first novel, Hyperion, is basically a pilgrimage, the last pilgrimage to the time tombs that's been sanctioned by the Shrike Church. Now, there's 7, and they each, while they're traveling, tell their tale. It's a la the Canterbury Tales, Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. It's structured on that. But we learn a lot of things by that, and I won't go into details. But this is sort of the structure and the story, and we learn that there is a battle, or there has been a battle in the future between universal intelligences. Universal intelligence of the computer and a humanoid universal intelligence. And that is being thrust back in time, and it's affecting their time period. And everything is like a fulcrum. It's coming to a head, it's coming to a point where the time tombs are opening. They're synchronizing with the current time, as well as at the same time these other groups, these ousters that I mentioned, these other humans that reject computers, are coming, and they want to take over the planet and the time tombs and try to control the Shrike. So there's all this stuff going on, plus a lot more. So this is sort of the plot, the story. However, he is basing a lot of this stuff on other things. Like Hyperion is the name of a poem, an epic poem that a character that is on the pilgrimage is writing. It's an uncompleted. He hasn't completed the poem, the Hyperion Cantos. But that also is the name of Hyperion. Was a poem that John Keats was a romantic poet, lived from 1795 to 1821, died of tuberculosis in Rome. He was an English poet, and he started an epic poem called Hyperion. Then he did Fall of Hyperion, and he started writing this. It was never completed, like Martin Salinas's, the character in the novel. And it's similar type of story, where John Keats was writing about the gods and the Titans and Olympus and struggles and war. Well, that's what Dan Simmons has he's taken that and transposed this into galactic and universal, conflicts between universal intelligences, the AI, the technical core, and humans. And he does this very, very neatly. And it's also like, John Keats becomes a character in the story as well. It's the Technocore have recreated the consciousness as much as possible of John Keats. And then, created a flesh and blood body for him, based on DNA, that they have located in wherever. That's not explained, but it doesn't need to be. But they create his body, recreate his body, and create a consciousness as well. And as I say, I won't go into details of why that is and what the purpose of that is. But he uses a lot of the poetry. He uses other poetry as well, like throughout. Like at the end of the the first novel, he talks about they go hand in hand and they walk into the valley. And I'm sure he's referring to Tennyson's 1854 poem. I forget the name of it now. Yeah, the Charge of the Light Brigade. Into the Valley of Death. They rode. And because this is the Valley of Death, the Shrike Valley, the Valley of the Tombs, that they're going into, because there is a slicing and dicing death machine that's there, the Shrike. So it's the Valley of Death. And then there's other times he pops in lots of cultural references, but other poems, like he says the one character says, I've got many things things to do before I sleep, which is a reference, I'm convinced, with Robert Frost's poem, Miles to Go Before I Sleep. It's Stopping by Wood on a Snowy Evening or something like that, I think it's called. And he puts in a whole bunch of little things of science fiction writers too, and titles and stories. The poet Martin Salinas at one time is talking about the death of the earth, and he says, the earth abided. So he's referring to George Stewart. Earth Abides, post-apocalyptic novel that was written in the 50s. And then there's other references to even Sherlock Holmes, because the character says, the dog in the night, referring to, the Silver Blaze story. And it's permeated with stuff like that. But that to me makes it more interesting, but you don't need to know these things to enjoy it. But there's even more deeper things than that. He takes like philosophy that was from philosophers and mathematicians, and of the 20th century mostly, and he interweaves this into the story to a certain extent. One big one is Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. Butchered the name, I'm sure, but he lived from 1881 to 1953. He was a Jesuit priest. He was an archaeologist, paleontologist, philosopher, and he was actually in on the Piltdown discovery. He might have been one of the perpetrators, but it's never been proven one way or another. But he had this theory of an omega point where in the future, human intelligence and everything, like this is very, very, I'm very simplifying it here, because I need to learn more about this too, because I'm interested in the background that Simmons used. But omega point where human intelligence creates a universal intelligence, and almost like a god. And that is what Dan Simmons uses, that this becomes like a god. And there's one Jesuit priest in there that is accused at times of almost falling foul of that heresy of this, and so it's referenced throughout, and it's used, and it just makes it so much more deeper. And then also too, the cybernetics and mathematics of Norbert Wiener, who lived from 1894 to 1964. He was a philosopher, mathematician, but he pioneered sort of cybernetics, the science of communication between organisms and machinery, to put it simply. But yeah, and it's just, and the names of characters, the one character is Braun Lamia, and Frances Braun, Fanny Braun, was John Keats's one love or best love and fiance before he died. And so Simmons has taken her surname for the character's first name, and then Lamia, he's taken a poem that Keats has written and used it as her surname, but it also is it's the name of Greek. In Greek mythology, a woman, and with certain powers, and then later it like the name sort of changes and becomes something else, but it's all part of the character. And then her character's father's name is Byron. So he just infuses all this stuff with this, and there's the sort of typical sort of tropes of plot lines, but it's where the basis of these plot lines and the intricacies of the things that he's based this on, and the philosophy and the people that he's based this on is just fabulous. And because you can spend a long time picking it apart, and a lot of it is that you sort of read it and then you reflect back and you go, oh, that's interesting. But again, you can enjoy it. Like, it's a ripping story. The story itself is ripping, and it's a page turner without knowing any of this stuff, without understanding any of this. But if knowing some of this stuff and exploring these little tendrils that are off, it just makes the story deeper. And that to me is great science fiction. And Dune is very similar. Dune is just as intricate, but Dune explains a lot more throughout the characters and things in the actual plot lines than Dan Simmons does sometimes. It's there, but it's more of a reflection and everything. But then he does, like, especially that's in the first part, he does expand on that more so in the last two novels. But yeah, it's so intricate, and this is where science fiction to me raises above just the normal, just shoot 'em up type thing of space opera. There's space opera in this. There's space battles, all sorts of things, and wonder. It's all there, but there's more than just that. A lot of times science fiction, and it can be very enjoyable science fiction, but it's just that superficial level. But only occasionally do some writers dig deeper, and they bring up so much more from this. And science fiction, a lot of times, I've always said, it never really tells you what happens in the future. It tells you more about what's happening at the time the person's writing it. And it's very much so with I think Hyperion, because there's things, like I say, there's this interconnected world of this web that he's used, and this is 1989. And one character, like, he's sort of severed from the web, and he's having almost withdrawal symptoms because he can no longer contact and have information at his fingertips, because he can no longer. And these are just little things, like, these are throwaway things in the story, but these are all. But there's dozens and dozens of these types of things that add up to something magnificent. And he just talks about other things of how humans, haven't really changed much. It's still it's almost 1,000 years in the future, and there's still the petty hatreds with each other, and it hasn't really changed. And that's that you can argue, well, humans may evolve into something different. Fine, you can argue that, but he uses this as saying, like, you look back 1,000 years, and what motivated a person still motivates a person today, 1,000 years later. So now, from today, 1,000 years in the future, it's still going to be the same thing. However, he does throw in a few other little twists and turns in that as well. So there's like I say, it's not, there's other people who have gone more details into the story. My purpose here was just to sort of say why I think it is a great science fiction novel, because, or series, because it encompasses all this depth to it, and the depth keeps going every time you read it, because you start seeing other things, and if you do happen to go on one of those little tendrils, those rabbit holes of what Dan Simmons is based it on, it just reinforces the depth and the interest of the story. For me, it does anyway. And a lot of times you don't get that with science fiction, which is fine. It's just, a lot of times it is just for fun, and that's it. You don't really get the depth, and the writer never meant to do that. But it is nice when you do see ones that do this, and they are few and far between for science fiction, I must say. It's most of them are very, very superficial, which is fine. It's part of the genre. But anyway, so that's it for that. I wanted to just continue on with my idea of that I'm going to go ahead with our future history project, Asimov's future history project. I mentioned it in last week's video, and wasn't sure exactly when this was going to happen, but now there's other people that have come on board, other booktubers that will join me and us doing this read along, and it will start in December. I will get a list up of books and the stories in the internal chronological order of the story of the future history, and we'll start in December. But I'll have the list up by by mid-August. And I'll leave my email at the bottom in the description again, and do feel free to email me if you want the list. And there's two sort of ways of doing this. There is reading just the canonical Asimov, just his future history books, or read the whole thing of where others have published within the future history universe as well. And I'm going to be reading, because I've already read several times Asimov's writings. I'm curious to see how these other ones fit in, and I've only read a few of them, so I want to read those chronologically. And there's several others that are going to be doing that as well. But it's up to you. Yeah, if you want to join, you can join at any point. If you just want to read the original Foundation trilogy, and when we get to that, that's fine. But it's a big project, and I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be very interesting to do this and discuss this. So yeah, so send me an email or put your in the notes, and just keep an eye, and I will keep updated with this, and I hope that I can continue to do something science fiction wise every week now as well. Again, at this point, I'm not sure what I'm going to do next week, but this was just sort of happenstance, because I'd read the two, and I thought, yeah, that's a good point to jump off for this video, and I'll figure out something next week. But I hope everybody's okay, and I'm going to end the video now because I am melting. I will talk to you next time, BookTube. Bye.